Yes, I grew up in regional Victoria in Australia in a small little country town called Little River, and one of three boys in my family, mum and dad, and had a really active childhood, I guess, and sport was always a part of our daily routine and daily existence. And I guess from a very young age, I got involved in netball from the age of 8, actually. So one of the first sports I played as a young kid, and my mum was heavily involved. And remember spending a lot of my childhood sitting in a pram on the side of a court watching mum play and watching it on TV with mum. And it was just something that I became really passionate and interested in. And yeah, really progressed it from there. So I began playing the game as an 8-year-old kid and was really lucky to, I guess, eventually start playing men's netball at the age of 15, where I was playing for Victoria, my state, and also Australia by that age. And went on to have about a 10, 15-year international career and spent many of those years as captain of my state and also my country, which was a childhood dream. And really fortunate to have been able to travel to a few countries and play and have some great success as an athlete. And I guess the coaching pathway for me probably began when I was about 15 during high school. It was the first kind of part-time casual job that I picked up and really saw it, I guess, as more of a hobby than anything else. And when I was in high school and went to university studying media and broadcasting, my media career was what I was really passionate about. And coaching was something I just kind of always naturally did on the side because it was quite a progression from playing and kind of tied in quite nicely with what I was doing. But through opportunities and some mentors that come into my life and really encourage me to think about coaching on a deeper level. And from about 2012 onwards, I guess my high performance coaching career began and started off as an assistant coach and worked my way through the ranks, I guess, pretty quickly. I'm only 36 now and have a lot of experience as a head coach, which I think is still quite young in terms of age, I guess, in my profession. However, I've been quite particular and purposeful in gaining a lot of experience over my 36 years and a lot of different experiences too, as I think that's really important in coaching. And now really fortunate that I can make a living being a full-time high-performance coach. And I'm probably one of the only men in the world that are making a living as a netball coach, which I take great pride in and hope that, I can be a source of inspiration for other coaches out there, be it male or female, that might be working in a female or male dominated sport as such. As an example that, coaching is coaching. And if you're passionate and good enough, rewards and opportunities will come. So, yeah, really lucky that I've made a career out of what I'm extremely passionate about. And netball's certainly given me, a huge amount of life opportunities and different experiences that have, I guess, helped and shaped who I am today and who I am as a high performance professional as well.
Yeah, and it's taken you from the sunshine to the rain in the northwest of England.
Yeah, it really has. It's a very different lifestyle, but as difficult as it is to enjoy the weather over here, it's I think something that you do certainly become really grateful for. That your job can take you over the other side of the world, and you can experience different places, different cultures, different people, and yeah, like I said, to be one of very few male netball coaches making a living out of what we're doing, and even though I'm over the other side of the world having to do it, it's still quite a great experience.
No, definitely. And then touching upon what do you think makes a great team?
I think there's a number of different elements around making a great team. I think the beauty of team sports and what I guess I really love about it is the ability to embrace every individual for who they are and what they bring to the environment and allowing them to use their strengths to further enhance the greater good of the team. And I think that's what's really important. A team is obviously made up of a group of individuals, and each individual having a role to play for the team, and each person really buying in and owning the role they play, knowing that it's not about them, it's about the team. I think that's really important. But the embracing and the empowerment of each individual within the group to make the team what it is, I think, is what I like most about teams. And I think what makes great teams is people feel like they belong, like they're connected, they're valued, and they also have a role to play no matter what their role might be. And the best teams are the ones that have players that are selfless, or people that are selfless, that certainly have the ability to make others rise and make others shine whilst sacrificing their own self in certain times. they're probably some of the key aspects of what makes a good team. At the end of the day, I think the mentality of team first is what makes a great team. And there's no individual that's bigger than the team. And when someone does become bigger than the team, they no longer become a team person. So team first mentality and embracing each individual in the team for what they can bring to the overall dynamic is, I think, what makes a team successful, regardless of winning or losing.
Yeah, no, that's good. Have you got any examples of where you've experienced that great team sort of environment?
Yeah, a couple of different ones, and I think on two different scales. I guess back in 2013, when I was the assistant coach of the Adelaide Thunderbirds, and we won the ANZ Championship, which was the #1 netball competition in the world before Suncorp come into fruition. And we went through that season losing just one game and won the grand final by 2 goals. And I think what that team was all about was, again, each player really understanding their role and the deep respect that they had for each other as teammates and people. And that's not to say that every single person in a team has to be friends or they have to get along, because the reality is, when you're mixing many different personalities, not everyone is naturally inclined to be friends with each other. And I think that's what you need to accept, is that's fine. However, the respect and trust of each person in the environment to do their job and to allow others to do their job is really important, because I think what you appreciate in those team environments, and I guess that big learning and that experience when we won, was that everyone has a role to play, and you can't play your role without other people doing their role. So that respect, that trust, that belief in each other, I think is really critical, because they're the things that will hold you in good stead and hold up under pressure if they're really strong. And if those areas are weak or fragile, the team won't be successful and you won't achieve success in its ultimate way. So that was a great experience of what team was about, was just deep trust and respect, regardless of personal relationships or feelings for each other, in a professional setting, was really important. And I think what I'm doing at the moment with Leeds Rhinos is, our history is, we're 15 weeks old.
Yeah.
And I've got players from all over the country, from many different experiences, that have come with many different experiences or journeys through netball, be it positive, be it negative, otherwise. And they've come into this environment all with a story to tell, all with a skill set to bring, all with a personality to contribute to the environment. And, one of our big philosophies is around embracing each individual for who they are and not making them be something they're not, but certainly allowing them the freedom to be themselves, but also then buy into what we want to create as a team and what we want to stand for. And that contribution that the players are making, I think, is really seeing our culture and our environment thrive. And hopefully that transfers onto some good performances on the court. However, certainly from a team dynamic perspective, I think we're achieving some great things so far as a very new team by simply embracing people and getting them to really buy into something bigger than themselves.
Yeah, no, that's good. Good. And then in terms of that, you've already answered a little bit about this, but what is high performance and what does it mean to you?
Yeah, high performance is an interesting one, because I think a lot of people, have very different terminologies of what high performance is, and also their understanding of what high performance is. And I guess, being an Australian, my interpretation of high performance netball is a little bit different to what it is over here in England. And one of the things I'm trying to really educate and teach and get my players to understand is, what does it mean to be a high performing athlete? What are the high performance behaviours that go with being a high performing athlete? And I think the biggest thing that comes with high performance is, it really is around standards of excellence, standards of performance, standards of behaviour, and benchmarks that are almost non-negotiable in terms of quality, in terms of output with intensity, in terms of effort, in terms of how you behave and operate within an environment. So, we hear a lot in the UK around performance environments, and this is elite and that's high performance. However, there's certainly a standard that goes with high performance, and a level of credential that needs to be within that space, and a level of expertise, and a level of consolidated learning and understanding. And I think when you talk about high performance sport, you don't just talk about playing the game on the court, but you talk about the whole holistic approach to what high performance is. And, that's strength and conditioning, that's nutrition, that's sports psychology, that's well-being, that's science, that's data, that's recovery, it's wellness, it's all of those different elements that actually that actually allow you to perform at the highest possible level. And there's a lot of education that needs to go around that in how all those different elements of high performance actually link and work together. So what is the correlation between recovery, sleep, and performance? How does strength and conditioning impact what you're doing on the court from a technical, tactical perspective? How does well-being and psychology actually train the brain to allow you to execute the technical skills under pressure? So that's, I think, what high performance really is. It's not just training and playing the game, but it's all the other elements that go around it. And then also the level of standard of excellence within the environment in terms of what's expected from yourselves and others, and the team. So it's quite multifactorial and very deep and thorough. And it's something that's constantly evolving as well, because more science and data gets involved in high performance. And as coaches, we all need to evolve with that and continue to learn about that space, because that's the way that sport at the highest level is going.
Yeah, no, definitely. And how do you go about, as a coach, ensuring that happens?
Well, I guess the biggest thing for me, probably at the first point with these athletes, is that I have here in a new environment. What I've created at Leeds Rhinos is obviously a daily training environment for them, where they train full time in terms of they've got a training commitment every day. They certainly don't train full time hours like a normal employee, but they're expected to train every day, be it in an on court technical, tactical, strength conditioning, team session, match play, recovery, psychology, whatever it might be. The biggest thing is, I think, the education, and it's getting the athletes at this stage to really understand, like I said before, how all of the different departments of high performance actually work and are connected, and buying into that so they really understand the bigger picture. Because being an elite athlete, like I said, it's not just about putting the hours in physically to train your body to get out on court and play, or get on the field and play, or on the track and whatever it might be. It is about all of the other factors that allow you to do those things at the highest possible level. So the first thing I think you need to do is ensure that you've got all of the service providers available for the athletes, and that's setting up your programming and your infrastructure and what it actually looks like. So getting key staff in place to lead and drive sports science, conditioning, strength, whatever it might be. And then also getting the athletes to understand how they're all connected and interrelated and how they all impact performance. So there's a lot of factors to it. And the biggest thing, I think, is having the resources, getting the infrastructure and the programming right, and then educating and teaching the athletes to understand and really connect to how it all works in the bigger picture. So it's quite a job.
And the no excuses environment, I guess you've got every little element where it allows the athletes to achieve success, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it ties into one of my key philosophies as a coach too, and probably many coaches at the highest level probably believe in this too, that it's so important that athletes take ownership of their athletic journeys. It's not, I put a lot of onus on my athletes to not expect me to be the ones to get them to where they want to get to. Whatever they achieve in their career is through their own hard work and their own effort. My job is to provide them with the platform and the resources to do that, but it's not to actually do it for them. So I always say to my athletes, particularly my young, developing, emerging ones that are learning and growing all the time, I say, I'll be your biggest supporter, your biggest critic, and I'll hold your hand, but I'm not going to do it for you. So I think at the end of the day, any athlete that achieves the ultimate success in a team or an individual setting, it comes from that inner drive and that inner belief within. And yes, they have great people around them to support them and guide them and coach them and nurture them. But at the end of the day, the coach doesn't win it for them. The player wins it for themselves. So, my job is to provide all the services. It's to provide the guidance and the platform and the environment. And it's up to the athletes to make the most of it and access those resources accordingly, and really ensure that they have that internal drive and hunger to be the best. And if they do, they'll quite often succeed if they have everything they need around them.
Yeah, fantastic, good. And then just in terms of yourself, have you had anybody who's influenced your journey? And if you have done, why have they done that?
Yeah, a lot of different people, to be honest. And I think I'm a really curious and inquisitive type of person that loves to learn and loves to read and is always hungry for new knowledge and new ideas and new ways of thinking. And I kind of seek a lot of personal development all the time through reading books or, watching YouTube of different coaches and really embracing people's stories. It's something that I'm very passionate about as a human being, which I obviously connect to with my coaching as well. But probably got a couple of key mentors that have really shaped and influenced my career at different times. And the first one would be Jane Woodlands-Thompson, who is the former head coach of the Adelaide Thunderbirds when I was an assistant coach. And she's now the general manager of women's sport at Collingwood Football Club. And a very successful coach, a very efficient and meticulous high-performance director and operator. She was the one, I think, that obviously gave me my first opportunity as a young assistant coach in the professional league. And she was the one that I think identified a talent in me that I probably hadn't realised or acknowledged just yet. And it was at a time where I was really probably just seeing coaching as more of a hobby and something I love to do as opposed to a career opportunity, because at that time there were no male head coaches in Australia making a living. So I wasn't sure if it was possible for a young male coach to achieve that, but she certainly saw something in me and empowered me and put a lot of belief in me to, I guess, end up where I am right now. And I think when you find someone like that in your life that does, I guess, light that fire within, they become really influential people. And, you know, she plays a number of different roles in my life now. We're still very close friends, but, you know, we're colleagues. I had her as an assistant coach when I head coached Adelaide, so we reversed roles. But we take on like a mentor-mentee relationship, a good friendship. Sometimes she's a little bit older than me, so she plays a little bit of a mothering role to me as well. So it's really quite interesting in terms of the dynamic of the relationship, but she's certainly one of the key people in my life that has allowed my career to take off as it has and gain those experiences. And I certainly wouldn't be where I am today as a 36-year-old head coach without her investing in me heavily during those early years. And the other one would be Tom Patrick, who's a high-performance director and sports psychologist, who I think really opened up my eyes to the complete other side of coaching and sport, and that's the game between the ears, all the things that happen in the brain. And he supported me through some pretty challenging times in a career in terms of, you know, really struggling to get some results and performances and being in quite a difficult working environment. But his leadership psychology, his life philosophies, his Buddhist mentalities were really quite captivating to me, and certainly, opened myself up to a whole nother way of thinking, and a whole nother way of really, you know, keeping perspective and reflecting on your own self and your own performances. So those two are probably the biggest influences that I've had and helped me through very different stages throughout my career and life. But like I said at the start, I'm incredibly hungry for knowledge and I'm always seeking it. So I sometimes can get in vicious cycles on YouTube and just find clip after clip of things that I'm really fascinated by, whether it's social science, psychology, whether it's just an interview with a coach, listening to their experiences. It's a really great way to learn when you're listening to someone else's lived experiences in any field, to be honest. So yeah, that would be the influence that I've had. And, you know, because I'm very open-minded, I'm constantly influenced in many different ways because I'm hungry for that new level of knowledge that is out there.
Yeah, no, what comes across, Dan, at the moment is that love for learning, and a lot of people I've been speaking to on this series, to be successful, that is, for me, a non-negotiable. You've got to have that desire, that hunger to learn and get better and be open-minded. So that's awesome. Good stuff. And then just on the next point then, obviously your career, you're 36, you're still probably at the beginning, really. You want to go on to achieve more things, but at present, what out of all your accomplishments, what are you most proud of now and why?
Oh, it's a good question. I think one thing that I'm really passionate about with coaching and high performance sport, and this is probably because I've had very diverse experiences, is that it's so important that we don't always measure our success based on our results, because results, I think, can sometimes mask where we're actually at and what we're actually doing. So I had an experience in Adelaide as the head coach for 2 years during Suncorp Super Netball, which is the best netball competition in the world. And I was appointed into that job as a head coach as a 31-year-old. And in hindsight, it was way too soon in my career and I wasn't ready for that level of job. Not because I didn't know the game well enough, but I probably didn't know myself well enough in terms of managing stress and pressures, because I've never been in an environment like that before. And then all of the other elements that go with high performance coaching these days, the management, the staff, the board, the commercial, all of those other factors. And I think it's one of those jobs at the highest level is that you won't know what you won't know until you're in it. And I think as a 31-year-old rookie coach, I was in an environment that was pretty under-resourced and the team was struggling and it was tough. And it probably wasn't a place where I could ever really see myself thriving or being successful in the terms of wins and losses. However, what it did teach me was the much, much more important factor of deep reflection around keeping perspective and what does success actually look like and how do you measure success. And so if you do have a team that perhaps is technically the 8th ranked team in the competition, what does winning or what does success look like in your environment? It might be incremental gains, it might be progress, it might be individual development, it might be all these things that aren't reflected in a scoreboard at the end of a game. But if you can still acknowledge those moments, you're still moving forward and you're still progressing. So I think that that certainly for me opened me up to a very different world of what high performance was, because before I had that experience in 2017 and 2018, I only always won. So as an athlete, I only won. I maybe lost a game with my team occasionally, but winning was the norm and winning was what we expected all the time. And in the very early days of my coaching, it was winning, play finals, get to a grand final, win or fall just short, but you're always leading a team that was one of the strongest. So when you have an experience on the complete flip side where you're the team that's 8th ranked and, you know, the light at the end of the tunnel seems a long way away, it can really challenge you. So I think for me, you know, what I reflect, and I've had some premiership wins as an assistant coach in both the English League and in Australia. And so there has been a lot of success in my coaching career as well as a 36-year-old. How I think the biggest thing that I'm probably most proud of is my growth development and my wisdom, which is something that's gained through experience. And one thing I tend to do very well, that I think a lot of people can relate really well with me, is my ability to make meaning of a hardship, a failure, or a struggle, and actually use it as something that is incredibly positive and powerful and a catalyst to drive forward. So the way that I am now as a coach, 3 years after having, I guess, a very difficult time with the Thunderbirds in Australia, the coach and person that I am now, while I still have many of those qualities that make me a unique coach, my growth, my overall development, my wisdom, my understanding, my perspective has grown and developed enormously. And I really, as I've said before, I love learning and growing. So when you can actually see yourself grow, enhance, develop, evolve, it's a really powerful experience. So that would probably be the thing that I'm most proud of. And I'm a big believer too, that when you're a coach and you stop learning and you stop evolving and you stop moving forward, you stop coaching. And I love that about the industry, that it's always moving forward and you're always progressive. So yeah, to capture it, I think there's been moments and wins and trophies and championships that have been amazing, and I've loved those moments. However, I think there's nothing more powerful than when the penny drops and there's some growth that's taken place and you've learnt from an experience that's been confronting, challenging, tough, that you never thought you'd get out of, but you've then seen the growth happen in the next moment where something like that might have taken place. So yeah, that would be what I'm most proud of. And, you know, look forward to the days where you can win more titles. However, understanding that, you know, one coach gets to win that 1 year, one team gets to win that 1 year, and ensuring that you measure success in many different ways above and beyond winning and losing.
What are your 3 non-negotiable behaviours that you expect from yourself and others you come into contact with?
Good question. There's a couple for me. So I think when it comes to anything on court, I've got 3 values that I always operate by, and that's quality, intensity, and purpose. So every time the athletes or even myself as a coach steps into the training environment, those 3 values are at the very forefront of our mind in everything that we do, even if it's the most mundane or basic task. There's always a purpose behind it, which means there's always an intent, which means there's always a level of quality in how we execute things. So those 3 things are really critical for me, and just making sure that everyone in my environment understands that intensity, for example, doesn't necessarily have to be represented through physical demands. It can be physical, and it can be intense focus, intense concentration, and how you capture that and what that looks like, I think, is really important. And I think when it comes to quality, the second one that I probably have in my environment all the time is standards and expectations. So that's, again, one of the things that is high performance, is what are your standards? What are your benchmarks? Therefore, what are your expectations every time you're in the environment? And what you understand too is that not everyone can always meet those standards and expectations all the time, and that's okay. But when we drop below those standards, we acknowledge that and we bring ourselves back up to our benchmark as quickly as possible. And that to me is what high performance is, because we can't always be on and up. We go like this all the time. It's not linear, but when we dip, we need to know how to get ourselves up nice and quick. So that would probably be the second one for me. And then I think the third one, which is really important, comes down to communication. And, it's something I'm really passionate about with my coaching, and something I probably do really well because of my background. I'm a journalist by trade, a sports broadcaster in my other life, and communicating to athletes, to staff, from a leadership perspective is really, really critical. And that transparency and clarity and honesty in how we communicate is really important, because coaching for me is human being working with human beings. So if we're open with each other, we're honest with each other, we're transparent, we understand, we listen, all of those communication skills are really critical. So, it's a bit of a non-negotiable to be good communicators and listen to understand, not listen to respond, but really understand what's being said. Ask questions if we need a little bit more information or a bit more clarity. Don't not ask a question and just get on with it. Make sure you know. And that would be the main thing. So quality, intensity, purpose, standards, behaviours, benchmarks of excellence, and then the overall communication piece as well.
If you could go back to school, so you're a 12-year-old boy again, what advice would you give yourself knowing what you know now?
Ooh, good question. Really good question. I think probably the biggest piece of advice that I'd give to a 12-year-old or a younger self would be to be prepared to ride the wave. Yeah. I think when I was younger, I was a high achiever, so I did very well at school. I always achieved what I set out to do, be it in sport, life, whatever it might be. The moment that you get as perhaps a young adult, or in your 20s or mid-20s, early 30s, and you have that first big, I guess, failure or setback that you haven't had to navigate your way through in your younger years, can really be quite confronting, and it can unearth some things about yourself that you weren't aware of or that you weren't familiar with about yourself, but you eventually learn those things. So I think being really aspirational, ambitious, and positive and optimistic is incredibly important, but also being very self-aware, very clear on keeping things in perspective, and understanding that you're not always going to get what you want when you want it, but being able to demonstrate resilience early and accept that things sometimes don't go according to plan, but persist and keep going. So I think that's really important. Because I guess for me, the struggle I had in Australia maybe 4 or 5 years ago, when my team wasn't getting great results, it was probably the first time in my life that I felt like a failure as such. However, those 2 years have probably been, like I said before, my biggest achievement, because of how I've overcome that and worked through that setback and that struggle to re-emerge with new wisdom, new knowledge, new growth. That the setbacks that we face throughout our life are probably more powerful than the achievements we get for what we can learn from those moments. So, my advice would be to ride the wave and embrace the setbacks and the challenge, because they're going to be your biggest source of information and growth. And you may not see it at the time, but be patient, you will when the time is right. So embrace the hardships and make meaning from them, and you'll be a much more well-rounded and equipped individual to handle the bumpy ride that life or sport can throw at you.